His name is inseparably linked with the 1930s through the 1950s, the era of America's great style, a time of long cars, prohibition, and gangsters. He became an idol early in life, the hero of his generation, and he has remained one to this day. Among all American pop stars, he had the most scandalous reputation, yet it never seemed to bother him. Most importantly, Frank Sinatra was the first secret and open sex symbol of the United States. The velvety, mesmerizing voice of Frank Sinatra enchanted his female fans and drove them into ecstasy. Stadiums roared with applause for his talent. But, paradoxical as it may sound, his life could have turned out completely differently, and the world might never have known the great singer. For beyond his passion for singing, Frank had another, a hidden, almost obsessive passion. According to Sinatra's biographer, Randy Taraborelli, one could even call him a sexual maniac. The singer was obsessed with his own virility. Sinatra, the only joy of his mother, a notorious bootlegger who also ran an illegal abortion clinic in New Jersey, took great pride in the remarkable size of his manhood. And this was not mere bragging. After a date with Sinatra, actress Ava Gabor was reportedly taken to the hospital with torn tissue. Those who did not end up in the emergency room usually left quite satisfied. Sinatra's former school girlfriends, now elderly and respectable ladies, still recall with trembling what he used to do with them. One of them, now living quietly in Philadelphia, was only 13 at the time. It seems, she says softly with a sigh, that Frank did nothing but make love, passionately, and with everyone. He was unbelievably erotic and kissed like no one else. How could anyone forget that? But it was not only about sex. Sinatra was obsessed with women themselves. "I can have sex by myself," he would tell his girlfriends, "but with you, I make love." He could be cruel, he could be tender, and naive provincial girls melted in his arms. Yet Sinatra left them without a second thought. That hurt many deeply. The singer Antoinette de la Pinta even took him to court, accusing him of breaking a promise to marry her. She claimed Sinatra seduced her and abandoned her pregnant and miserable, although during the trial, it turned out that the poor victim had long been married. Sinatra wielded not only the instrument of his manly pride, but also his fists, and they were strong ones. His father, by profession a firefighter and by nature a street brawler, rarely went a week without a fight. Since old man Sinatra was quite a decent boxer, it was usually his drinking buddies who ended up on the ground. He taught young Frank how to move around the ring, how to throw a proper punch, a skill that would save Frank more than once later in life. He was short, slender, and therefore an insecure young man. His sexual success had nothing to do with his height or physique, but rather with the fiery energy that boiled inside him, an unstoppable sexual drive. It was almost impossible to say no to a man like that. His peers were infuriated by the erotic escapades of the Italian runt and did not hide it, and that was when Sinatra would show them his famous swing. In the street crowd, he earned respect. The guys he hung around with in bars were gradually getting involved in man's work, racketeering, robbing small shopkeepers, and bootlegging. In time, those connections would come in handy for Frank Sinatra, though back then he had no idea. He simply enjoyed the thrill of it all. He worked as a waiter in a bar, wrote a little about sports for the local papers, chased every skirt that crossed his path, and, on top of that, he sang. When he was born, the future sex giant came into the world feet first. The doctor had to use forceps, and did so clumsily enough to damage the boy's eardrum. That, however, did not stop him. Sinatra began performing in nightclubs in his hometown of Hoboken, then started touring, and soon he was invited to sing on the radio. And then something incredible happened. At his concerts, thousands of schoolgirls screamed, fainted, and cried hysterically. The small-town playboy had become an object of worship, and his cult was slowly turning into a nationwide psychosis. He possessed a remarkable voice, a soft, lyrical baritone. It seemed as though he could sing without taking a breath. Sinatra had mastered a rare vocal technique. His pauses for inhalation were almost imperceptible, as if he anticipated each next note before it came. But it was not just technique. In his songs pulsed an unstoppable masculine energy that drove women mad, and he loved to emphasize it. Frank Sinatra was the first pop idol ever to lick his microphone while performing, a detail that made his fans scream in ecstasy and try to storm the stage. During the Great Depression, everything collapsed. Everything except the entertainment industry. Movie theaters were packed, concert halls were bursting at the seams, and even candy sales soared. Frightened and disoriented people craved something bright, something to make them feel alive again. And Sinatra's romantic songs gave them exactly that. He became a wealthy man. He began wearing $200 shoes and $500 silk suits, sums that could support an average family for half a year. He was welcomed into high society, but the son of a bootlegger who ruled her neighborhood with an iron fist was hardly a model of refinement. Italian by blood and temperament, Sinatra felt right at home among the Italian mafia. The mafia, after all, was an essential part of America's great style. Gangsters shaped the national myth, became heroes of films and novels, and even influenced fashion. A double-breasted suit, a Borsellino hat, a tie darker than the jacket, a shirt darker than the tie, a golden Parker pen, and a diamond-studded watch. Anyone dressed like that radiated power. And power was what Sinatra craved all his life. He felt like a Superman from a young age and began to live as if no one else in the world mattered. By this time, he was already married. It happened almost by accident. He was 18, walking down the street, when a charming Italian girl named Nancy Barbato was sitting on her porch painting her nails. Sinatra called out to her, "Hey, what about me? How about a manicure, baby?" History does not record her reply, but from that moment on, their romance began. It lasted 4 years and ended in marriage. They stayed together through hardship and joy alike. Nancy was truly ready to share all the burdens of life with him. This amazed Frank, a man who was selfish to the core. Yet he loved his wife and, for a time, was even faithful to her. But staying faithful was not easy. At his concerts, screaming, beautiful, and utterly devoted fans were willing to do anything for him. Hollywood stars, too, were eager to have a fling with the singer. Sinatra's head spun from all the attention. Although his wife had given him 2 children, Nancy and Frank Jr., he was rarely at home. Life was smiling at him, and he was in a hurry to taste every bit of its sweetness. Then came one scandalous affair after another. Sinatra seduced and abandoned women without even realizing the damage he left behind. His life began to spiral downward, and he did not notice the moment he stepped onto the path of self-destruction. The average American knew that the famous Frank Sinatra had a lovely wife and 2 adorable children. But one morning, He opened the newspaper and read that Sinatra was living with the stunning Marilyn Maxwell, the most beautiful of all Hollywood blondes. A month later, the Free Press informed him that Sinatra was madly in love with Lana Turner, the Queen of Hollywood, who had risen to fame thanks to the film The Postman Always Rings Twice. The disillusioned fan threw away his concert tickets. Attendance numbers plummeted, but Sinatra barely cared, for Lana Turner was simply irresistible. She was considered the most glamorous woman in America, an incredible body, the finest diamonds, magnificent furs. Sinatra pursued her for more than a year, won her heart, and almost lost his family. He rented a house for her, but she rejected it. That only made him want her more, and he left his wife. Yet after living with his beautiful blonde conquest for just 2 weeks, Sinatra grew bored. He returned to Nancy and the children, while Lana Turner cursed his name to anyone who would listen. After Turner came Ava Gardner. When Sinatra saw her photograph, right after celebrating his son's birthday, he exclaimed, "I am going to marry that woman," and sent her a bouquet of white roses. Friends begged Ava not to make a mistake. By then, Sinatra had the firm reputation of a destroyer, a man who burned everything around him. But she could not stop herself. The Hollywood prima donna, soft-hearted to a fault, felt sorry for him. A strong, independent woman who shaped her own destiny, Gardner had an irresistible weakness for troubled men. Sinatra was going through a deep personal crisis. He was miserable, and she rushed to help him. She pitied Frank Sinatra, and soon afterward, she found herself in his bed. Ava could not resist, and all of America turned against her. People somehow decided that she was the one who had seduced Frank. Children prayed for poor Nancy Sinatra, while housewives wrote angry letters to Gardner. But neither of them cared in the slightest. In 1951, Frank and Nancy divorced, and he married Ava Gardner. Yet Ava continued to see her ex-husband, Artie Shaw, and Sinatra himself was not exactly faithful. Both were furiously jealous, and their marriage soon turned into a nightmare. Ava had emotional breakdowns. Frank coughed up blood. After 6 exhausting years of constant turmoil, Sinatra fled from her with his nerves completely shattered. They separated, but despite everything, they continued to love each other for years to come. Then came Marilyn Monroe, a gentle and fragile soul whom Sinatra, in front of numerous guests, once barked at, "Get your fat backside out of my living room." After her came Humphrey Bogart's widow, Lauren Bacall, the famous actress Kim Novak, the widow of President Kennedy, Jacqueline, and finally Mia Farrow, whom Sinatra divorced exactly 1 year after their wedding. By the end, he had gathered a small private harem. During his wild parties, he would pair off each male guest with a long-legged beauty, while he himself disappeared into the bedroom with 5 women at once. But by that time, his life was falling apart. Sinatra drank heavily, and it began to show. He grew bloated and sluggish. His legs gave out beneath him. He became addicted to tranquilizers, which only worsened his temper. His reputation was utterly ruined. The press thrived on endless stories about his affairs, and Sinatra developed the habit of driving through the city at night in a convertible, firing his revolver into shop windows. Each of those escapades cost him $20,000, $18,000 in bribes and damages, and $2,000 for the glass itself. He was slowly going insane. Once, trying to scare yet another girlfriend, he nearly shot himself. He began losing his voice and became terrified of performing on stage. His agent and best friend, George Evans, who had spent years begging Sinatra to zip up his fly, died of a heart attack after one of Frank's latest scandals. He desperately needed a new success loud enough to drown out the filth. But no producer in Hollywood wanted to deal with him anymore. By the early 1950s, Sinatra was a broken man, and no one knows how his life might have ended had it not been for a favor he had done about 10 years earlier for the infamous gangster Lucky Luciano. Frank had smuggled $2 million in cash to Havana and personally handed it to the man the American press called Public Enemy Number 1. They became friends, and now it was Luciano's turn to return the favor. Mario Puzo later told this story brilliantly in his legendary novel, The Godfather. Luciano did not have to send a horse's head into any producer's bed. A single phone call was enough. Sinatra was cast in From Here to Eternity, won an Academy Award for it, and triumphantly returned to the establishment. From then on, he behaved more wisely, and if he still sinned, he did so out of sight of the respectable public. His partners in pleasure now included the Kennedy brothers, with whom Sinatra shared a stunning long-legged Irish girl named Judith Campbell. He also went into business, and his production company, Kent Productions, turned out to be surprisingly successful. Sinatra had everything a man could dream of, but fate was not finished with him yet. The wild life eventually took its toll. Sinatra's legendary virility began to fade. He started taking testosterone, but it did not help. And then, at the age of 55, he fell in love. Barbara Marx, a former model and mediocre dancer, was 29 years younger than he was. She agreed to all his whims, got along with his friends, and seemed happy with everything. Sinatra's aging mother, Dolly, openly called her a whore, and Barbara only sobbed quietly. She knew her place, and that pleased Frank enormously. They married in 1976, and little by little, both Sinatra's business empire and Sinatra himself fell under Barbara's gentle control. She made sure that his children from his first marriage received as little as possible from the singer's $200 million. Around his bank accounts, his priceless art collection, and the rights to his musical legacy, endless battles were fought. From time to time, Sinatra would explode. He would scream obscenities, throw ashtrays and vases at her. But soon he would calm down, become meek, and gaze into Barbara's eyes again. Even her son from a previous marriage, a distant relative of Karl Marx, received a share of the inheritance. The women had won. The old Sinatra was gone forever. Barbara played the role of a celebrity's wife flawlessly. She welcomed stylists, masseurs, and hairdressers, chose the best gowns. Sinatra, meanwhile, wanted only one thing: to be left alone. She managed the business, arranged luncheons, held meetings, hosted guests, while the bloated old man quietly played with his beloved model trains. He no longer wanted anything, no longer strove for anything, and tried not to think about anything at all. All that remained of the old Sinatra was his voice, that flowing, velvet voice still heard in every record store in the world. And truly, it was the best part of him.